Hello. You're familiar with the brain, yes. It's that organ up here. Gives you consciousness, makes you think a little, perceives the senses that kind of go through your body, through your nose hole and your eye holes and your mouth hole and your finger holes. Oh, and you can't forget your ear holes. And, well, it's a learning machine, yes? It accumulates knowledge through sensory inputs and then molds that into survival, I guess. And also, like, ease of use. It uses heuristics, if you will, but for survival purposes. Um, and something that I think is interesting is language, right? We all have the same mouth, but we all can't hear the same sounds it can make, or differentiate the tiny differences, the minute differences in language sometimes. And you can't pick up on that, usually, unless you know the language. And the fact that the brain can alter itself to perceive these small differences in language that come from the same mouth hole and then rewire it so that it can really pick up on that. And then maybe it'll lose some sounds because, pruning and whatever, because it doesn't hear those, so it doesn't need to know those or pick those up, so it gets rid of those. And then you're left with the language that you can hear very effectively because, that's how we communicate, and that's important to know what someone is saying. And this is a very, very, very good example of the power of, learning in the brain, of, repetitive changes that challenge the brain to pick up these sounds and perceive them properly, and then removing the sounds it doesn't need in order to understand the language better. But if you were wanting to learn another language, then you gotta pick up on the other sounds, right? Well, this I don't have much research on in the dome, but I could imagine that over time, as you begin to maybe use the language in everyday life and talk to native speakers, you would eventually pick up on it and become fluent in understanding those minute differences in language. Because, just to give an example, you could have read or you could have read, and those are first contextually different, because you can read something or I have read something, but also they have a homophone that can confuse a person. So I read something, but something is the color red. But no, I read something. That doesn't mean I readed it. I made it red, the color. It means I read that. And that makes language difficult to parse because it's hard to pick up on those small differences in language that kind of make no sense and really have no rules for why it is that way. It's just kind of how it is. But I think it makes sense for a language like English that kind of dominated the world. And so people who used it in different areas with their native culture implemented some of those different words that, when combined with other cultures, didn't really make sense. There's a lot of Latin roots and French roots and German roots, right? What was it? I think it's house is German, because you can, you can hear the house. And then mansion is French, because you can hear like mansion. And all these words that all kind of mean the same thing have their own, I guess, takes from the original native language that combined with English of whatever it was to give these new words. And that's why like English is a hodgepodge of a bunch of different languages, because it also has, I think, some Latin in it as well. And that's whack. That makes it a weird language. Unlike, the native languages that it derives a lot of the words from, that do have like concrete rules for why things are these words. And I think it's a lot of mismatch. So there's like a lot of things that don't combine well. And this is what makes a lot of the weird combinations of words that use the same mouth noise but mean different things. Because I feel like, now I'm not some language specialist, but there aren't a lot of languages that use the same words, but you just have to pick up on the context. And I think in maybe Mandarin or Cantonese, there's you can say the same things, but it's like a different tonality means different things. But there still is that different tonality. But I feel like for English, it entirely depends on the context. So you don't really have that tonality to work with, because this isn't a tonal language. English doesn't have different tones to make words mean different things. They're just all the words, every word, all the same. And then you can, depending on like your regional accent, say these words in different ways, which they're all the same words, but regionally there's different, I think dialectics is the correct word for that the way you speak it is entirely different from another way that someone else speaks it. Because like comparing Boston to like Louisiana, you'll hear all the same words, they're just said in very, very different ways. And that, also makes it pretty confusing. But overall, I think English is still a pretty cool language to have, like to exist. Because I could imagine where a world where there's all these different languages, and then you pick up on them depending on like what you do in your life. So like you'll have like finance language. I guess you could take it to like careers where you have like a financial language, or like a teaching language, or an engineering or mathematics, a STEM language. And instead, we just have everything all jam-packed into one, so that, you can use all of the language in all of the fields. That's pretty rad. You could become multidisciplinary, or a Renaissance man in all these different things, and still use the same language to describe all of them. Anyways, toodles.